Hello and welcome to My Baseball History, presented by the Shoeless Joe Jackson Museum and Baseball Library in Greenville, South Carolina. I'm your host, Dan Wallach, and I'm the Executive Director of the museum. My Baseball History is a long-form interview podcast where each episode I'll talk to someone new who has some sort of association to the game of baseball. No matter who I talk to, we'll talk about how they fell in love with baseball, how their career started, and how they got to be where they are today. On today's episode, I spoke with award-winning British baseball artist Andy Brown. For over half a decade, Andy has traveled the globe with his paints to document baseball, ballparks, stadiums, the players, and the people who make up the game. So far, he's worked in the United Kingdom, Korea, Japan, Taiwan, China, Cuba, Mexico, Canada, and in the United States, painting all levels of the sport from major leagues to independent ball and everything in between. In the last episode, we spoke with Joey Mellows, who's on Twitter at BaseballBrit. Joey and Andy have been friends for years, and in the summer of 2018, the two of them flew from Korea to the United States where they watched 32 games in 34 days. They saw 40 different teams play in 24 different ballparks in 8 different states. Andy painted at least one canvas per game, sometimes more, and always created other sketches and works during the rain delays, in the car, at restaurants, in the hotels, or waiting for the games to begin. In the 2019 season, Andy did something that no one else has ever done before. He visited all 30 major league ballparks in a single season and live painted the action that unfolded before him. At the conclusion of that trip, Andy exhibited his paintings at Doubleday Field in Cooperstown, New York. In all the ballparks in which he's worked, his paintings and the process of him actively painting during the game has always attracted a huge amount of attention. Andy live paints baseball to visually record and promote the game he has come to love. Through his work, he examines the diversity but also the similarities in baseball and the structures in which it is played in different countries. By doing this, he hopes to uncover more of the history, more of the stories, and to be able to better understand what it means to the people who watch, play, and organize the game. He's preserving those moments for future generations to see. Andy's work has been recognized by news outlets worldwide, with articles written about him in Europe, Asia, and North America. He has appeared on BBC television and radio, ESPN, Fox Sports, 11 Sports, and has sold his work to galleries, museums, and collectors across the globe, including Major League Baseball players. He even received recognition from Buckingham Palace and has a question about his artwork in the board game Trivial Pursuit. Andy likes to arrive at the ballpark a couple hours early. That gives him time to find his ideal view, one with an interesting angle, an interesting geographical backdrop, or an interesting feature of the ballpark, and then set up his easel and start painting. The early setup allows him to get as much paint onto the canvas as possible before the game starts. To get the field in first is key to Andy, as that sets the stage for the characters of the performance as they appear. For Andy to paint in a ballpark, he requires very little. All he needs is a space about 3 feet by 3 feet. It can be and has been anywhere within the stadium, on the concourse, in a press box, in the upper deck, or on stadium steps. He's worked in all sorts of environments and places to create his artwork, which holds stories of the cities, towns, and experiences he had while there. In this episode, we covered lots of ground. Andy tells us the hardest part about being on a long road trip by yourself. We find out the difference between the stadium atmospheres at KBO games in Korea and NPB games in Japan. We learn that there's no bad seats in a ballpark, that you're just getting a different perspective depending on where you are. And we hear the story of the magic of baseball, and why the Field of Dreams may actually be heaven. With all of that information and much, much more coming at you, it may be helpful to follow along with the episode's liner notes on our website. You'll still be able to enjoy the interview without the extra help, but sometimes when I'm listening to things like this, I like to really go in depth. So I've provided some photos and links to give you all a better understanding of the things Andy and I are discussing. Since he's an artist, we'll be talking about specific ballparks he's painted, so being able to actually see his work as he talks about it will definitely add something to your experience. Those liner notes can be found at the Shoeless Joe Jackson Museum website, which is online at www.shoelessjoejackson.org. If you want to follow along, head over to the museum's website and click on the podcast tab at the top. You can also just head to shoelessjoejackson.org/shoelesspodcast and it will take you right there, where you can click on the Andy Brown episode or any past episode you may want to catch up on. Everything in the liner notes goes in chronological order of how we talked about them in the interview, so you should be able to easily keep your place as you listen. At the end of the episode, I'll explain how you can answer a trivia question on Twitter to win your choice of a DVD copy or a Blu-ray copy of the classic movie Field of Dreams, so stick around until the end of the episode for that. The The winner of last week's trivia contest was Dan Fredericks, who's on Twitter at FMDano74. After listening to the Baseball Brit episode of My Baseball History, Dan knew that Joey told Rafael Palmeiro he should regrow his mustache when he was a member of the Cleburne Railroaders. So Dan, shoot me a DM on Twitter at Shoeless Podcast with your mailing address, and I'll send you your prizes. Now, here's my interview with Joey's friend, award-winning baseball artist Andy Brown. I don't normally do this, but when I'm going to start this podcast, I'm going to start it with a story.
Yeah.
So I've seen your posts for the last year or so on Twitter, and I've always thought it would be cool to run into you. I've been a bartender in Wrigleyville where the Cubs play for a few years, and the problem is I'm always working when they're playing their games. So I always just figured we'd just barely miss each other because normally you don't post, or up until this point, you haven't posted where you're going to be until you're there. And it wouldn't give me enough time to get there. It'd be gone.
Yeah.
So I was in Cincinnati last week for a symposium on the 1919 World Series. And literally on my way home, I stopped at a gas station. And as I'm filling up with gas, as the gas is pumping into my car, I go on Twitter and see you post that you were at the Reds game the night that I was there.
Correct.
And I missed it. And I was like, damn it. I missed my chance.
I love that, to be honest.
So, yeah.
I kind of love that.
Only because we're sitting in this room right now do I love that. I would have hated that.
Yeah.
But so a couple days later, I'm at the Field of Dreams in Dyersville, Iowa on a random Sunday. And I'm doing an interview for the podcast with Craig Purcell, who is a tour guide at the Field of Dreams. And after we finish up recording inside the house, I walk out onto the field to play for, a couple more hours till the sun goes down. And I look up, and there's somebody sitting against the white picket fence painting. And I'm like, there's no way that's him. But who else could that be? So I walk up, and lo and behold, it's you. And let me just say, if you learn nothing else on your trip around America, I hope that you take away that baseball is magic.
Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely. The whole trip's been magic. And, I mean, that was magic. And the whole, it shocks and surprises me, and the twists and turns. And I've only been travelling I've done 15 stadiums now. It's just over a month on this kind of leg of the trip. I had 2 weeks on the trip in April time. And this is like the second part of it. I'm doing 24 stadiums, getting the rest finished off.
Mm-hmm.
And everything's been magic. I mean, it's only been a month, but it feels like years, and it feels the most incredible coincidences have happened, which can't even be coincidences. Well, the most humbling and most awe-inspiring moments, and but also there's been tragic, or not tragic, but depressing and tragic stuff going on. Just in America since I've been here.
Mm-hmm.
And you're seeing it on the news, and you're hearing it, and you're seeing it on Twitter and whatever else, and it's just the highs and lows of the trip. Certainly at the beginning, I remember the first couple of weeks, it was really hard hitting. There were some real good things happening. I was having a great time, but there were some terrible things happening. It was just whoa, what is going on?
Yeah.
But those little things, running into you at the Field of Dreams, beautiful place, completely magical.
Yeah.
And then some guy comes up to me, "Are you Andy Brown?" Well, yeah, I am. Have I dropped my wallet over there or something? How do you know me? It was kind of special.
Yeah, I mean, it's no coincidence that place is called the Field of Dreams.
No, it's unbelievable.
Tell me about your drive to Dyersville, what you did during the drive, and then what you saw while you were pulling up to the field.
So I'd planned the trip, and I was going from Cincinnati, coming up towards Minneapolis, towards the Twins. And Dyersville was on the way, and I thought, we've got to make a stop. And, I thought it'd be a place where people would just pull up in their cars and get out and have a look and take a photo, and then they're off again. And then on the morning when I woke up to go up to Dyersville, I had about, I can't remember, maybe an hour left of the journey, whatever, up to there. And a friend had sent me a message, and it was about Dwyer Brown, and he was travelling, or this summer he's travelling around minor league ballparks, and I was like, that's kind of cool. It's kind of, doing something similar to what I'm doing, and it's always interesting to see other people doing that in their own way and why they're doing it and what they see and find in it. And read about it, and then had kind of posted something on Twitter or Instagram, and he'd commented on it, and I was like, oh, that's kind of neat. And then I found some podcasts with him being interviewed, and I thought, well, it'd be interesting to hear more about him and his story and what he's doing. And so I'm listening to that, and then before I left the hotel, I'd like the Field of Dreams kind of like, I was going through a few clips on YouTube, and I was like, wow, there's some real special kind of things going on in that. So I was kind of really just getting myself into the thing, not consciously necessarily, but I was just getting into it, I guess, on the way up. And then I listened to the podcast or the interview with him, and it was brilliant. Like, I really enjoyed listening to him speak, and the kind of way he spoke about it, and the magic that he had kind of almost received from being in that film, and how it had touched so many people. And it's a baseball film, but there's not huge amounts of baseball in it. It's more about those relationships, about fathers and sons and connections. And he's talking about that, and then I was like, wow, this is it's pretty special. And then as I get towards, I'm driving in Iowa, and I've been all over the States at the minute, and it's beautiful. Every state's got its own beauty, but Iowa's really special. And then as I pull up to the Field of Dreams, I get to come to the bit, and you kind of turn right off the main road, and you go down the way. Well, there's all of these cars. There's loads and loads of cars, and I thought, wow, what's going on? And then I pull into the main bit, like the car park, and there's all these cars, and in the distance I can see the 1919 Chicago White Sox are on the diamond. And I was listening to Dwyer Brown speaking, and I just felt like, I was like, what on earth is going on? Like, I thought my brain had rewired itself or something, or like YouTube had like gone in a loop in my head or something. I was like, this is insane, what's going on? And then, you blink a few times, and I could see like the White Sox are right there in front of me in the 1919 uniforms, and it was amazing. I was like, this is what on earth's going on? And then I was like, wow, this is incredible. I've got it. Like, what? Like, you realise there's like a game or an exhibition game or something going on. And I was just like, I can't believe this. I've got to get out my car as quick as possible, and I need to be there and start painting. I want to capture this. I want to see this. I want to document this. So I did. I got my stuff together, and I had to park a fair way away because there's all these cars. So I run down to the field, and there's a guy with a Field of Dreams shirt, and I said, hey, what's going on here today? And the ghost players, they do like exhibition game or exhibition kind of performance or whatever, 4 or 5 times a year. And he was like, this is the last one of the year. And I was like, no way, I couldn't believe it. And I was like, well, I'm doing this summer. I'm going around all 30 ballparks. I'm painting them. And he was like, oh, that's great. And he got me a chair and said, yeah, if you want to paint, that's great. So I started painting, drawing, and it was just phenomenal. It was just, it was another one of those things where I was like, I can't believe this is happening today. Like, I quit my job in October last year, 2018. And then kind of ever since then, I've been planning the trip. So I planned this, and I planned the route 6 months ago or something. Yeah. I didn't know that on that Sunday in Dyersville there'd be this thing going on. And then there I am, and it's going on, it's in front of me. And I was like, oh, it was so special. It was incredible. Yeah. And that was just neat beyond belief. And it was one of those things. It just felt amazing. It was like, wow, I'm just meant to be here right now. Yeah. And then I'm doing my paintings, and the guy said to me, they're only going to be there for 45 minutes. So I do, 45 minutes left. So I do a quick sketch of the field and the players on the field. Then they start signing autographs. So I do some of them signing autographs, and then they kind of see what I'm doing, and they're kind of interested in what I'm doing. So I start showing them, having a bit of a chat, and then they're posing for photographs. And then it was kind of over. It was a couple of hours and it's finished. And I was like, wow, that was just mind blowing. And then I realised I haven't eaten all day or something, and it's like 4 o'clock in the afternoon. I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to fall over in a minute. I need to go and get some food. So I quickly go into Dyersville town, have a bit to eat, and then come back and start painting in the evening. And then that's when you kind of roll around the corner and rock up, and I'm like, wow, like, incredible. Yeah. It's just amazing.
No wonder you wanted to go back. You had
yeah. It was just so special, like incredible. I mean, New Mexico's been a place I went on the trip, and beautiful.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned that you're in the middle of touring all 30 Major League ballparks this
Correct.
summer.
Yeah.
What gave you this idea? Why are you doing this?
Yeah, huge question. As you can tell, I'm British. As you know, I'm British.
I just thought...
Yeah, it's not South Dakota, I'm British. I've lived in Korea for 10 years, or I lived in Korea for 10 years. I don't live there anymore. And I taught art and design over there. And I lived in Korea, and the KBO's big over there, it's huge. So I went to a baseball game, started to watch baseball. And the league's huge, and it's fantastic. So anyway, I went along with some American friends, and it was cool. It was really cool. I was like, wow, this is, kind of, you see it on the TV, you see it on the films. And it was awesome. And then I started to go intermittently, sometimes with my friend, with my friends, just go to the ballpark, see a game. It was great. I say I was in Korea for 10 years, but after a few years, I guess, of being in Korea, then I started to watch baseball more regularly with different people. And then also I'd be going to the ballparks, I'd be drawing and sketching it, just in sketchbooks to begin with on pieces of paper. I always find that drawing something helps me understand it. It helps me understand the colours and the light and the motion and the movement and the shapes.
Interesting.
And it helps me like figure things out, I guess. I think when you draw something, you've got to really study it. And you really have to study it. You've got to take it to pieces, and you're looking at the very essence of it. If you're drawing an apple, you're really looking at that apple. And I remember doing that, like, when a teenager, like drawing an apple, but you're really studying with the skin and the texture and the feel of it and the smell of it, and you're trying to get that into the drawing. And the more you do that, the better it gets. So anyway, so I was drawing and painting baseball, and then it was little sketches, and then it just got bigger and bigger and bigger, and then I got more and more into the game and understood the game more as I was doing it, and understood the rules more. And then I was travelling all around Korea doing it. There's, I think, 10 regular stadiums in Korea, and then little ones as well. So I'd be travelling around, and it was an excuse almost to go to a new city, new town, see a new ballpark, understand the game more, see Korean culture more, how they celebrated the game, how they liked the game. And then, of course, the MPB is just over the road in Japan. So, you can go on a short flight or a ferry across to Japan. And there's a whole new load of ballparks to see and a whole new load of uniforms. And the Japanese way of watching a baseball game is very, very different to the Korean way of watching a baseball game. And the way they play is very different.
How would you characterize the way they watch baseball in Korea?
Korea it's like you're in a big K-pop concert. Like, there's cheering and there's dancing and singing and there's songs. For every player's got their own song. And it's not like I guess it's their walk-up tune, but the crowd will sing it to and they'll have like a cheermaster who's leading them in it. There's a lot of fist pumping and waving and clapping and cheering and all that sort of thing. But it's quite choreographed to a certain extent, and it's quite the fans know the song for each player, and they'll sing it for that guy as he comes up to bat and while he's batting. And then in Japan, in Japan I feel like there's more. First of all, they've like brass bands in the crowd, which gives and drums. So but it's more brass bands. I feel like when I think about Japanese baseball, watching a game in Japan, it's more about hearing the horns and hearing the trombones and hearing the trumpets, and the cheering there has got a different. It's not poppy, the cheers over there. Over there, the cheers more deeper, but it's more like, it kind of takes me back to maybe a football stadium back in the UK or a soccer stadium, where there's a different sort of power to it. It's a much more forceful, stronger power to it. Whereas the Korean atmosphere is more like a pop concert. It's so much fun and it's so great. Not that I really want to be in part of that or inside that, but I love watching it and hearing it, and it's part of the game, and it makes a real special atmosphere for the KBO. And in Japan, it's got a much more severe or much more serious kind of feel to it, a heavier kind of density to it, which is quite Japanese. There's a real, I lived in Korea for 10 years. I mean, it's an amazing country and I love it. Very, 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 very special to me. Japan is like, again, I love traveling in Japan. I love Japanese culture and, the food and the people and the history. But again, it's so different. There's a depth in the Japanese ballparks and support and the history, which comes across when you're there. And in the fans, there's a real there's a severity to it.
So it must be boring as hell for you to watch a baseball game in America.
No.
There's no marching band. There's no coordinated cheering.
No. Well, it depends who you're with, but no. In America, it's different, isn't it? It's very different. But you guys have presidents racing around and the mascots, and you have the puppy parade or whatever before the game starts, and then independent league game. But you have these amazing things, these amazing characteristics of that state or that stadium. But it's just different. Here, it's so much more of it's the national pastime, and you feel that generally, or you can certainly, there's some people. This is their sport, and you can really feel that, and the knowledge and the attachment of what baseball means to them and their past and their childhood and their memories and their culture and their identity.
Yeah.
Whereas I feel like in Korea, it's more of a fun activity Not for everybody, of course, but it's in some ways there's a bit more of a lightheartedness to it,
Mm-hmm.
more fun to it, which, not saying that in America people don't have fun watching baseball, but there's a different relationship to the game. There's a different relationship to the sport,
Mm-hmm.
which there is in Japan. And then you go to Taiwan. I remember watching the World Baseball Classic in, I think it was 2017. It was in Seoul. They had one of the groups. It was in Seoul. And the Chinese Taipei team were playing. And I remember being in the stadium in the Gochok in Seoul. And the Taiwanese fans were incredible. And they were so noisy. And they had more drums and more cymbals. They had the horns as well, but it's more like a cymbal and percussion kind of feel to them.
Mm-hmm.
And to their cheering and to their chants and to their songs. And I was like, wow, I've got to go and watch some baseball in Taiwan. So I went over there and painted those stadiums. So I've been all around Japan and done it, and farm teams in Japan, and the minor leagues and whatever, and then the same in Korea, and independent baseball in Korea, and same in Taiwan, and then I'm here in the States doing all 30 MLB and independent and minor, as well.
A lot of baseball fans have a lifelong goal of getting to all 30 stadiums.
Yeah.
And you're doing it in 1 year.
Yeah.
So a lot of people would consider this a dream summer.
Yeah.
Is that how you view it?
Yes and no, because like you said, it's their lifelong goal. This has never been something that when I was 10 years old, 15 years old, 20 years old, even 5 years ago, or even, 5 years ago, I probably never would have imagined I was doing this. Never would have thought about doing this. So it's not been something I've always wanted to do. It's just been, it's grown, it's developed. And, the more I've understood about baseball, the more I've learned about baseball, the more I've decided I want to see more and more and more. It's almost been like, you see, I painted a lot of the ones in Japan,
Mm-hmm.
and then it was almost like, oh, what am I going to do now? And it was like, okay, well, I'll go and do the farm teams. And then I'm going to do the exteriors of the ballparks. So it's just been, I've come to the States for quite a few years doing this, like in much more of a small scale.
Mm-hmm.
But again, you found out about the independent ballparks and going to see those and exploring the different leagues and meeting the players and hearing the stories and, all the different people surrounding the game. And then this is the 150th year of professional baseball. And it's just all come to a head where it's just been like, okay, this is what I'm going to do. All right, well, I'm going to do that. I'm going to try and do it in one season. So I set myself that goal, and that's what I'm doing, and that's what's going to happen. And it's a tight schedule. But it's strange. It's not really ever been my goal up until recently. It's just kind of become my goal.
Yeah.
It's become my thing. But it's amazing. I mean, I can't believe I'm here. I don't understand how I got here, to be honest.
So run me through a typical day on this trip for you, like schedule-wise.
It depends. I mean, it does vary a little bit. But generally, I'll be spending 1 or 2 days in each city or in each town. And typically it'll be get up, try and get some breakfast. If I'm moving on to the next place, then it'll be, check out. So, checkout's typically 11. You might have a game that starts at 7. I want to be there about 2 hours before. I need to make sure my canvas is stretched, my canvas is primed. I've got my paints, I've got my brushes, they're all clean, they're all ready, I haven't lost anything. So I've got to prepare my equipment.
And do you prepare that the night before you go to bed? Do you do it the morning when you wake up?
I do it whenever I can squeeze it in.
Yeah.
I've never been so busy, and it seems crazy because so I'll set off at 11, ideally for wherever I'm going to.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe pick up some food on the way at some point, pick up some petrol or gas, as you guys would call it. And then a lot of these car journeys, I'm driving pretty big distances most days, so it might be 4 or 5 hours drive, get to the ballpark. On the way, I might still be making arrangements with the team, who I'm going to meet, where I should meet and where I should park, getting that all into GPS, get to the ballpark, go and meet the person, introduce myself, tell them what I'm doing, show them what stuff, have a chat about that, look at the spot they might give me in the ballpark, because usually they say, okay, well, we've got a couple of spots, which one do you want, or we're going to put you here. Fine. And then kind of get on with it. And then, I usually try to get there a couple of hours before the game starts, just so I can kind of get a good look at the place and get kind of settled. I feel like the more settled I am, the more I feel comfortable in a place, the easier it is to work. And I need to know, where's my colour, where's my paint, where's my brush cleaner, where's my brushes, what size brushes do I like using for this size canvas or for this ballpark or for these features. Sometimes I'll do a little sketch beforehand to kind of get an idea of the composition or the features that I want to include, how I'm going to stretch or pull or push it around. You know, the beauty of painting is you can do whatever you want with it.
Right.
You can change the colours, you can change the composition, you can move things, you can make things taller, smaller, whatever. I don't feel like I do that intentionally to,
manipulate things.
Yeah, I don't necessarily do it to, I don't want to damage the integrity of the ballpark or of the city, but it's I think it's always about what are the important things that I want to capture on this canvas.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to figure that out, and then do the painting, which will generally take most of the game. Depends on the length of the game, but usually, if I'm not finished by the time of the 7th inning stretch, I'm hoping I'm getting towards the end, because I know it's maybe not so long left in the game.
When you're painting a new ballpark, I mean, obviously all these ballparks are new to you. You haven't been to any of them. Do you talk to the fans inside the stadium and say, like, what do you consider iconic in this stadium? When you were at Wrigley, did you talk to people and have them be like, oh, the scoreboard is iconic for us, or the ivy on the outfield walls? Or is it so obvious in every ballpark that, like, this is what they are trying to feature? I know what needs to be in this painting.
I guess from my own research, from my own watching of baseball, from my own knowledge of baseball, I know, well, in some places, you know Wrigley and the ivy, the scoreboard in Wrigley, the marquee sign. There's the things I've watched enough baseball on, the MLB app or just from like some of the ballparks I've been before. But so you kind of have an idea of what's important. Usually the team will give me a spot. And, sometimes I'll ask the person, right, what do you consider to be the most important? But also I want it to be what leaps out to me as well, right. What seems to be the distinct thing to me, whether it's where the bullpens are on the field or they're tucked out over in right field or you can't see them, or there's a hill that goes up at the back of the park, or whether there's what flags are on the flagpole, whether, the state flag, the stars and stripes, and then I think there's the black one that they're for veterans and those sorts of things. So it's kind of a mix. I don't want to do anybody else's painting. Like, this is my interpretation of this place, and this is what I see in it, and this is what I feel about it, or this is what I get a sense from when I'm there, from the crowd, from my own instincts and what seems to be important. So I try to do it in my own way, I guess, or for what's, but of course, there's iconic things which I don't want to ignore. That'd be seemingly, if you take away the main characteristic pieces, then I'm not really sure if that's really capturing the ballpark or that place, the characteristics of that place. Yeah.
So back to your schedule. So how do you find the time to do all this stuff? You're doing all of your driving. You're researching the places you're going to. You're emailing all the contacts you need to email, set everything up. You're doing the art, like the point of your trip.
And I'm booking the hotel for that night.
Right.
And then at the end of the game, I'm back in the car. I've got to drive to the hotel that night. There was a day the other day when my phone had run out. I hadn't got anywhere to stay that night. So I have to go to the car, and it's, 10:30, 11, charge it up for a few minutes, get on booking.com, hoping that my credit on my phone will allow me to get on the roaming and I can actually book somewhere all right. Book somewhere, tap that in the GPS, okay, let's go, drive to that motel, check in.
So physically, how are you managing to do all of this by yourself?
Sheer willpower and determination. That's it. I think I'm like...
Do you have a bunch left?
Yeah, it kind of grows, but it ebbs and flows. I feel like I've always been... I think I'm pretty determined and pretty tenacious with things. When I'm really dedicated or passionate about something, I'll do it. But it does. I mean, there's been days where it's just like, I need a rest, I need a break. Yeah. Like how am I going to do this? But then something amazing happens. You have like the Field of Dreams. You have an amazing day there. It just completely lifts you, and you're like, this is. I mean, it is heaven. It's like, wow, this is incredible.
It's Iowa.
It is, right, yeah. And you can't, but it's so special. And you have those, and that's the beauty of it. You get these beautiful feelings, or even I'm at a ballpark and you meet somebody, or you're talking to somebody, or in Minneapolis, I get an Uber back to the hostel I'm staying in, and the Uber driver was lovely. She was so nice, and we had such a nice chat, and it was just this really nice conversation. 20 minutes on the ride home. It was beautiful. And it's just like, I'm really tired, and we're talking about whatever I'm doing, and then she's talking about what she's been up to and bits of her life, and it's just fascinating. It's like, wow, thank you very much, that was lovely. And then go to bed and get up and do the whole thing again. But you have those great moments where it boosts you up, and then at times, without a doubt, it's exhausting. It's tiring, and it's mentally challenging, physically challenging, and artistically challenging. I feel like as an artist, it's so intense and it's so hard to do it and to figure out how to do it and in what medium to do it and what size to do it. And there's no answers. You just have to do what you think is best, and you just do it the best way you know how at that time and how you feel, and that's all you can do. And I think that, again, that's the beauty of it. That's what I love about art and love about any sort of creative endeavour, is that heart and soul and that passion and the squeezing yourself to get all of it out so you can really feel whatever it is you're trying to capture. And the more you can do that, I think the purer the artwork and the stronger, the more powerful it becomes.
What do you think has been the biggest challenge of this trip? Is it the mental aspect? Is it the physical aspect? Is it the creative and the artistic? When you go to bed at night,
yeah,
what is the thing that you're dreading about the next day?
Like everything. Everything. Like, it's just, it's so hard. It's so hard. Like, it's been so hard, but so rewarding and so challenging and so amazing, but so hard.
Yeah. And
it is like the drives are long, and in the UK we drive 2 hours and we think that's a long way.
Right.
I was driving like 9 hours the other day. I've never done that in my life.
And you haven't left the state. You're still in California.
Of course.
It's
crazy stuff like that. And
did you have any sense of how big the United States were before this trip?
When I was teaching, I got one of my students, like a real cool student that I taught, and I was working out I had the route planned, and I'd call out the two cities, and she'd yell out how far it was in Google Maps or whatever. She'd tell me the hours. Uh-huh. And, it'd be like, okay, Kansas to Cincinnati. She'd be like, 8 hours. I'd be like, oh, God, that's going to be a long day. And then, I think you realise by that, it's a long way.
Yeah.
It's a big journey. It's a big trip. But you don't realise how tiring that is to yourself. Or just, there's a solitude about this whole thing as well. There's a, you spend a lot of the time by yourself in the car, going to get some food, waking up in the morning, okay, what have I got to do? Have I got this? Have I got that? I've got to reply to that email. I've got that person wanting this. There's a lot of strands to it. I think that's ultimately it. But there's also this overriding feeling of, what am I doing with my painting? What am I doing within my work? What am I saying within my work? What am I trying to capture in my work? Am I capturing that? And again, there's that question that hangs over that. And I'm experimenting with, new sorts of grounds that I put on the canvas, or new ways of priming it, or new ways of mixing my paint, or new colours. Mm-hmm. But I'm always trying to improve. I always feel like ever since I've started painting, or ever really felt like I was taking it seriously, I've never been satisfied with it being second best or second rate. I've always wanted to be the best. I've always wanted it to be really, really good. Actually, not necessarily that I wanted to be the best. That'd be wrong, because it's not really a competition. It's more about...
You want it to be your best.
Yeah. Yeah, I want it to be the best that I can do, and I want it to be something that I can be proud about and stand next to and say, yeah, I did that. And that's me. Yeah.
You said at a certain point in your trip that you felt like you were on autopilot, that you had to remind yourself what you were doing and why you were doing it.
At time, yeah.
So what are you doing and why are you doing it?
When I started, I thought it was a collection of Major League Baseball stadiums. I wanted to see them all. I wanted to see and paint them all, kind of like I've done in other countries. And more and more and more, it's been, this is the national pastime, and this is the nation, and this is the home of baseball. A game that I've watched for many years now, and I love watching, and I love the history on it, and I love the different ways it's played around the world. But it's become more and more that the stadiums are these like the checkposts along the journey, and through the different states and through the different terrains, and meeting the different people and eating the different foods and different climates, and more and more it's been that these ballparks are the big sign markers of each city, of each town, of each state. And it's almost like the journeys between those and how they relate or how they don't relate, or how they have that unique character or how they have that unique feel. but I'm also documenting the things in between. You know, I'm taking little old kind of Polaroid photos of things along the way, and I'm doing little sketches of the people I meet, the food I eat, the towns, the cities, the landmarks, the countryside, the rivers, the waterfalls, the bridges, whatever I see.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to capture the national pastime in the nation in which it's from,
Mm-hmm.
and also the essence of America and that nation, and where the national pastime is from, and what it means to people, and how people feel about national pastime, but also how people feel. You know, the people I meet, and hear their stories and understand how they view life, and the joys they have, and the difficulties they have, and the challenges they have, and the unique characteristics they have, same as the towns. And I want it to be a whole body of that journey and of this country, and at this place at this time, 2019, right here, right now.
So if you had to boil it down to what you have learned about America from Americans, or what you have learned about America from baseball, and what our perception of baseball and relationship to baseball, what do you think the essence is? When you go back to the UK and tell your friends, this is what baseball is in America, how would you boil it down?
It's massively important. It's massively important. It is the national pastime, and it's got a beauty, and it's got a spirit, and it's got a history, and it's got a legacy which shouldn't be forgotten, and needs to be remembered, and needs to be talked about, needs to be documented. And these stadiums, these ballparks, are the places where people would come together. And I feel like that's the big thing. That's like, I remember on the first bit of the trip, I was kind of shocked, or I was kind of like worried about the state of things, because I was like, there's just like, you know, there was the Walmart shooting, there was the Dayton, Ohio shootings, there was in Philadelphia as well, and it was these terrible things happening, and I was like, geez, like, what is going on? And in certain places, you know, I feel like the you can see the capitalist nature of America is very obviously right on your doorstep in most cities you go to. You see the very, very rich, and you see the very, very poor, and they're very obviously right in front of you. And there's a dividedness that you can see when you drive through the streets of America, or you drive through the cities of America. And you know, that's I don't think that's a good thing. I mean, it's terrible. I think there's, you know, distrust and anxiety and fear and concern, and you know, none of those things are good things. But when you go into the ballpark, everyone's together, everyone's having a good time, and they're unified, and they're rooting for the team, they're rooting for their favourite player. They're enjoying themselves, they're relaxed, and they're chatting to each other. And I feel like it makes those connections. And I feel that's the part of the journey, and maybe what's coming out more than I realised it would, is I'm understanding more what the ballparks give and what baseball gives to people in America, or what it means to people in America. And to me, it's not just about ticking off, dun, 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 you know, this stadium, this stadium, this stadium. It's become bigger than that. Mm-hmm. It's about those things in the stadium that are really important. I mean, there's always the stars and stripes in every stadium, and you know what the flag means, and what the national anthem means, and you know the surrounding conversations with that. But how baseball just holds and ties people together, and you know, Dyersville was a fantastic example of that. The cultural heritage and legacy of that one film, and what that means to people, and what it makes them think about and talk about, and those special bonds and relationships that we sometimes neglect. And I think baseball has that to it, and it's incredibly special. I think it's incredibly important. So I feel that's kind of it, if that answered the question.
Yeah, absolutely. How were you first introduced to baseball, and where did that happen?
That was in Busan, South Korea. I think it was 2009.
Okay.
It would have been April, because it was the beginning of this baseball season. A friend of mine who now lives in Seattle, he's from Boston, he just said to me, hey, why don't you come to a baseball game? Why don't you come and check it out? And yeah, I was keen. I mean, I'm a big sports fan anyway, love watching live events of any description. Yeah, he said, you know, do you want to come along and watch it? And so that was the first game and first time, and it was great. I loved it. I love the pace of it. I love the feel of it. I love the build up to it. You know, I love the ballpark before anything happens is beautiful. Mm-hmm. That bit where you're just there and there's not so many people there, but it starts to fill up a bit, and you can feel the adrenaline rising, or the tempo rising, and the sounds rising, and the hustle and bustle rising, and then the players come on, and then the game starts, and you know, it's that excitement of everything. And then at the end, everyone drifts out and goes their separate ways. It's gorgeous.
Mm-hmm. So you loved it right away?
Yeah, I mean, there was I love I seem to always use the word feeling. I feel like I say feeling a lot about many things, but
you feel like you say feeling a lot.
Yeah, I feel like I say feeling.
Got that feeling?
Yeah, I've got that feeling right now, and I do, and it was the feeling of it. It was the ambience of it. It was the pace of it. It was the tempo of it, the beauty of it. I mean, it's beautiful. There's no other sport that I think I've seen which has the same magic, and there's such a simplicity to it, but there's also such a complexity to it as well. Mm-hmm. That's the captivating thing. That's the thing that keeps me going back and back and back.
Do you consider baseball a team sport?
Yeah, I think it has to be. You know, it's one of those beautiful things. They're all individuals. You know, there's one batter in the box, but you need a team of those guys, and you can have a pitcher on the mound, but of course you need the guys behind him. But yeah, definitely, it's there's a beauty in that as well. I mean, it is, again, it's about connections and. You know, is it a 6-4-3 double play or whatever, and that sort of, you know, there's those connections and linking and meeting with people and communicating with people. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely that. Yeah. And you don't, and you know, another beautiful thing is that, of course, you have your superstars, but not in the same way. Maybe this, you know, the egos aren't quite as big, maybe, because you know the nature of the game. You fail, you know, 7 times out of 10. And if you do that, then you're pretty good.
Right.
And even in baseball, you know, there's the American dream. I mean, it's you can be a hero 1 minute, and then you can be, you know, right down again the next. And, you know, you can make $1 million one day, and then you can be in the minors the next. And it's reflected in the game. Yeah.
You talk about when you were in Korea and you'd go to the Korean Baseball League, and when, you know, you travel to Japan, go to the Japanese league. Do you pay attention to American Major League Baseball while you're overseas, or is it physically, how are you following Major League Baseball? Is it on Twitter? Is it on the MLB.com?
MLB, yeah.
Are you watching games? Or
Absolutely,
are you just looking at box scores?
In my first season, I used to watch just as many, because I guess I'd been watching baseball for a few years and going to a lot of games and building up an understanding of it. And I was reading books and, you know, I travelled around a fair bit. I was painting it a lot. But, you know, I was watching it in the stadium in Korea, or I was watching it on the TV in Korea, but it was in Korean, and I could speak a little bit, but I certainly couldn't follow all the ins and outs of what they were explaining. Yeah. Then I started watching things on the MLB app, or the pass or whatever, and you finally had, you had these great players explaining or talking about the history or talking about what had happened, and, you know, different pitches and all of that stuff, and it just made more sense, and I could just learn more and more and more and more. And I mean, I always feel it, like every time I watch a baseball game, you see something new, you see something different, you learn something else. I mean, I love sitting in all different places because, you know, I remember one time being sat kind of on the third base side, and I've never really sat on that side for some reason before then. And then you could actually really appreciate what the third baseman was doing, and you could appreciate the way he was communicating to the shortstop and all those little things. And it's fantastic. Like there's no bad seats, it's just a different view of the game. But there's so many little facets to it and so many little intricacies.
Do you find yourself gravitating towards a certain major league team? Like, because obviously when you're from America, your team is usually the team that plays in your city.
Yeah, of course.
Well, you didn't live in the country, so you didn't have a city to root for. No. So do you have a favorite team, first of all? And if you do, how did you find them? How did you gravitate towards them?
I follow the Mets.
I'm sorry, Mets. Are you okay?
Yeah, that's what I love about them. I mean, they're the you know, they're a big soap opera. It's incredible what goes on. But again, when I started watching them, I loved the characters and I loved the, you know, your Bartolo Colon pitching, and then you know, Big Sexy, and then you had Matt Harvey, the Dark Knight, and Noah Syndergaard, and, you know, Jacob deGrom and Cespedes and all those guys, and, you know,
and they still lost 100 games.
They were I mean. But they're just large and incredible characters, and, you know, like comic books,
and the perfect city for it too.
And exactly, and I guess also, at that point, you know, I love New York as a city. I'd been there a few times. I've travelled around America a little bit, but not extensively. And it's a city that, you know, it reminds me a lot of London, where I spent a lot of time growing up, and. Yeah, it's got that tempo, it's got that rhythm, it's got that heartbeat, and it's got the pushiness of London. So I just felt like, that's, if I'm going to have a team, then it's going to be probably from the East Coast and probably New York, and it wasn't going to be the Yankees. Because that seemed, you know, I don't think you can be I don't know, can you be an artist and follow the Yankees? I'm not sure.
Yeah, a lot of like filmmakers and, you know.
Right. So, but and the Mets, you know, they're just a funny history and yeah, just an interesting team.
Yeah.
Just kind of a mad team. And but also great uniforms and great logos and great ballpark. They're a fun team to root for and follow. And
so when you're overseas, what's the biggest challenge in following your team?
I guess it was just squeezing into the day or making it getting into the day. But I'd be at work. I used to be teaching, and then in Korea, you could even watch it during the day if I had a break or a free time. Then you could put a game on. It'd be kind of live. So
the time difference wasn't a huge factor.
No, in some ways it was. If you like on the weekend, it was perfect because you could wake up and then, you know, the game would start at like 9 a.m. So you could have breakfast and be watching, you know, the team and you, or you know, the Mets play, the Red Sox or whoever they had on that day.
And then 3 hours later, when that game's over, the Angels start playing.
Absolutely,
so,
yeah.
You could watch baseball all day.
Absolutely, and it's fantastic. Or if I was at work, then, you know, you could watch it on the replay in the evening, and so I'd do that. That'd be, you know, my night.
Cool.
And then often I'd be painting the players or you know, flicking through books or, you know, trying to find out new stuff, researching online, you know, just picking up stuff.
So you've lived in the UK.
Correct.
You've lived in Korea.
Correct.
Now you're traveling across America for the summer. Where do you consider home?
The UK, it's got to be. But, I mean, as you know, when I came in here, I have to take my shoes off at the door because after living in Korea for 10 years, Korean culture, you can't walk around with your shoes on like we do in the UK, and I guess you do here generally. But you can't do that in Korea. It's like it's so rude. So 10 years of being there, I take my shoes off. I mean, I can, you know, I spot Koreans, I hear Koreans speaking. I was, I don't know, I was in a car park outside an art store the other day, and I can hear two Koreans speaking, and I want to say "안녕하세요," and you know, I want to start talking to them. So yeah, I mean, Korea's a big part of my life, I guess. I mean, it was I guess it was a quarter of my life I was nearly there for at this rate, at this stage. So it was very important, and it taught me a lot and did a lot for me. So home's the UK, but I don't know. I know I've always enjoyed travelling, and I've always enjoyed being on the move. And although the UK's home, I'm not sure that I'd ever want to live there. I'm not sure if I'd ever want to live there long term. I don't know.
Interesting.
We'll see.
When you tell your friends or your family or your fans about the trip that you're on right now, they think you're on vacation.
Yeah, sometimes, yeah.
You're not on a vacation. You're on a business trip.
Absolutely.
Do you resent when people are like, oh, you must be having such a great time? Or is it like, yeah, you just know in the back of your head, like, they have no idea what I'm doing right now?
Basically, yeah. I mean, it's that thing of, I feel like anyone who really knows me knows how much this trip or how much painting's meant to me my whole life, or how much art's meant to me my whole life. You know, ever since I was about 14, or probably, I mean, I was always painting and drawing, I guess, earlier than that. But about 14 or 15, I feel like it really got me. Like, I really got in. I felt like, yeah, this is it. And almost nothing else mattered so much after that. And that's been it ever since. I mean, it's the thing I think about almost all the time. I'm thinking about, okay, that, you know, how would that look as a painting? How would I paint that? Look at that composition. Or, you know, I'll see something and I think, oh, that reminds me of a Edward Hopper painting, or a Norman Rockwell, or, you know, whatever it is. So I feel like I'm constantly thinking about it and dissecting it in my own mind again, trying to figure it out, because you're never done with it. And if anybody thinks that I'm here just having a really nice time, which I am, I'm having a very good time, but if anyone ever thought it was just easy, it was just straightforward, and it's just like a big extended holiday, oh my goodness, no, it's nowhere near. I mean, I wish it was. I mean, I feel like when I finish doing this, I want to go on holiday. I want to go and sit on the beach for you know, a week or so, just to like slow down for a while. Yeah. But it means everything to me. It's hugely important. It's got massively more important as I've gone. I feel like it's just grown. What I thought it was going to be was, okay, paint all 30 baseball stadiums and kind of see America, but it's just become, the facets and things attached to it have just become bigger and bigger and bigger, and my understanding's got bigger and bigger and bigger. But also with that, it's kind of also made me realise, wow, there's so much I don't understand about this, and so much I want to learn about this, and so much I want to explore with it, and that's baseball and America and people and connections, and, you know, you're thinking a lot about, you know, your family and friends and life, and all sorts of things, and painting, and it's
well, especially you're in isolation. You know, when you're in the car that many hours, all you can do is think. You know, because it's one thing when you're driving in a city and you've got an hour trip and you're sitting in traffic, or you know you've got to make a turn and 300 feet more you make another turn. When you're driving 8 hours, you're driving straight for 7 hours and 54 minutes.
Oh yeah.
So you don't have to pay attention to the road.
Not so much, no.
So all you're doing is thinking. And if you're not filling that time with listening to podcasts or...
There's been a huge element of... it sounds all very cliche in some ways, but like there's been... Yeah, there's that time to reflect. There's that time to think. And it's brilliant. I love it.
What have you learned about yourself on this trip?
Oh, jeez. A lot. I mean, this part's only been a month, or just over a month now. But it feels like forever. I think there's. I mean, geez, it sounds maybe terrible, but there's a self-acceptance. I think that's more and more, and also a belief. I mean, that's probably the hardest. Really, the hardest bit, and the. Yeah, like there's that. There's those real humbling moments, and that's incredible. Like, really, incredible. And it's like, you know, even when you come up to me, are you Andy Brown? I'm like, geez, like, how do you know I am? And it's incredible. It's really incredible. Mm-hmm. And I think that's it's been amazing the importance that people have attached to my work and what I'm doing, and that's been really special as well. It really has. It's been just unbelievably like humbling, and it's been great. I've loved it.
Have you paid attention to your social media following from the start to the trip? Like, have you seen the numbers go up? Does that stuff matter to you, or do you just...
I remember when I did the first couple of weeks, like back in April time, I did 6 of the ballparks and then 1 in Mexico. And I remember there was a guy in San Francisco who filmed me painting from the press box, then released it, and it was kind of like, who is this guy painting the ballpark? And I remember that, like, I landed in Denver and I switched on my phone or got Wi-Fi or whatever, and then all of a sudden I could see my Twitter and the following, the numbers were just like ticking up, and I was like, wow, this is incredible. Like, and there was, a bit of a surge, I guess. And does it matter? It's great. It's I love the fact that I can share what I'm seeing and share what I'm doing with other people, and then other people can see joy and get joy from it, or it makes them think about their past or their relationships with people or their connections to that place. To have that ability to do that, to share that, and that's incredible. That's again, it's really, really, really. I mean, it's fantastic, and the support people give me, the support's been incredible. I mean, people that I haven't spoke to in years have got in touch and, you know, just left a message. Hey, we really love what you're doing, and, you know, keep doing it. You're doing great. And, you know, today I'm sat outside Wrigley Field, and I'm sat on the pavement painting, and then some guy comes up to me and he just says, "You keep doing what you're doing. It's great." And I was like, "Oh, thanks very much." I will, and it's great, but it's lovely, and it's so yeah. I mean, the social media stuff is just nice that I can share, and it's nice, and but it's amazing, and it's lovely that people watch it and look at it and enjoy it, and want to come and kind of see what I'm doing or have a chat, and that's great.
Yeah,
but it's certainly not, you know. I kind of like there's kind of like you were saying that, you know, you'd kind of missed me, and part of me kind of likes that, because I don't necessarily, like, I do like talking to people and meeting people and all that, but I don't necessarily, you know, at the end of the day when I'm at the ballpark, I am, and I love chatting to people and I love talking to them, but at certain points I've got to focus and I've got to get on with the job.
Yeah.
But it's so nice when I'm finished, or if I'm taking a break, you can have a real nice chat to somebody or find out a bit about them, or even when you're doing it, you can have a little chat. So there's a balance, I guess, you know, at the end of the day.
You seem to focus a lot on the broad, like, panoramic landscapes of the ballparks. Why do you think that view is so powerful?
I think it gives the vastness of it, or it gives the sense of space. because there's so much to it, and like as a game, it's such a strange shape as well. Like, and all the ballparks, you know, are different shapes, sizes, dimensions, big bleachers, and then you have small little bleachers, and then you have huge outfields, small outfields, a lot of foul ground in some places, not much in others. The panoramic or the you know, that kind of rectangle gives scope to capture that space and those shapes, I guess.
When we were talking earlier, you talked a lot about energy being captured in your work.
Yeah.
Do you mean the energy of the crowd, the energy of the game itself? What do you mean by that? And why is that something that you're excited that you're doing?
I want to capture the energy of everything. I want to capture the energy of the crowd, of the players, of the movement, of the noise and the music, the city behind it, the motorway behind it, the people walking back and forth. I want to capture the energy of the grass. I mean, just everything that's there. You know, I want to capture that essence. I want to capture that energy and that feeling. And why? Because I think that's what makes it so special. I think that's life. I feel like that's the thing that we miss out on a lot of time is energy, or we take for granted almost those things that you can't necessarily see, but you can feel. You can look at a painting, you can feel a certain way, you can hear a piece of music and it makes your emotions change, or you can feel something very profound. You read some poetry or you read a book and it can, you know, take you into different places. That's those beautiful moments, and that's the power of art, and that's again what I want to capture from the ballparks, in the paintings and in my work.
You're into photography also, and I know you've experimented with tintype photography and pinhole cameras. Why do you think you're so enamored with capturing images?
Oh, that's a good question. Because I think it helps you understand the world. And I think it helps you to capture so many things within it. But I feel like maybe with photography, and why I kind of moved away from that, not completely, but focus more on the painting, is that I feel like, especially with painting, it's that feeling again. You can capture through the colours, you can capture your emotions. I can put myself, or you can probably do it. You can do it with photography too, of course. But I feel like for me, with paint and with colour and with a brush and brush marks, I can capture more a feeling, or more effectively, I can capture a feeling and an expressive quality, which I think is number one to me. And it's also done by your hand. It's done by your hand in your eyes, in your brain. And you feel just all working together. And there's real magic in it. Like we were talking about baseball before now, but baseball's got real magic to it. Well, painting's got that as well, and art's got that as well. And I feel that there's a craft to it, but there's also a spontaneity and a feel to it, which you always want to try and capture. And you want that to come across in your work.
What do you think is the most beautiful thing about baseball?
The history is beautiful, but I think to me the most beautiful thing about baseball is the atmosphere. It's the roar of the crowd. It's the peace. It's the stillness. It's the atmosphere within the ballpark and how it can change. But then there's that unity as well. There's that you know everyone's cheering in it, and you're part of that, and you can be so connected with people that you're never going to speak to and you're never going to meet, but you can be so connected and so in tune with them and be part of them. It's almost, you're all one living, breathing organism. Everyone's all together. And I think that's the beautiful thing about the ballparks, the beautiful thing about baseball is that.
You said that soccer was your favorite sport until about 2014.
Yeah.
What happened that year to make your favorite sport baseball?
I just understood it more. I watched more and more and more and more. And I just understood the complexities of it more. And I started doing more research into it and more into the history of it. I just saw the complexities of it captured me. Mm-hmm. But also the simplicity of it. I mean, that's the beautiful thing. It's so simple, but it's so complex. And I found that with the sport, it was just like there was just always more that I wanted to learn about, more that I didn't understand and I wanted to understand. So it was just that there's that more learning. It was just like a constant drive to, okay, well, why is he stood like that? And what do they mean when they say that? And why is he holding the bat like that? And why has that guy just done that? And why are they shifting on this guy but not on that guy? And, there's more and more and more. There's just... So I think there was just a fascination in there. But it was a fascination in the actual... The crunch moments of the game as well, and how exciting those... they're very, very minute seconds of action,
Mm-hmm.
but how the tension building up to that, split second of action, how incredible that is. And that I always feel like it's like a matador and a ball in a ball ring almost. And, or they're on stage. It's like you've got this great performance and this thing's just about to happen. And you get these amazing moments.
I feel like a lot of people, even rabid baseball fans, think that watching baseball on TV is boring. But you love watching baseball on TV. Why?
Because I feel like on TV, I mean, I love watching it both places, but I feel like it's very different. In some ways it's so different, but I love watching it on TV because with the cameras you can see the players much more closely, where they're looking, what they're thinking about. You can see the base coach talking to the guy on first and giving him advice of, when he's going to go and all that sort of thing. You see the players joking amongst each other. I love pitching. I mean, I don't know an awful lot about it to some extent, but I've met a few pitchers and studied, a little bit about it and tried throwing a curveball now and again, and, a very slow fastball. And the craft of pitching is more and more something that to me it's... to me, the pitchers are artists on the mounds. They're constantly trying to perfect and change and mould, and they're shaping with the ball. They're trying to cut that air. They're slicing that air with the ball in a certain way, trying to make it move in a certain way. And I love watching that on TV. I love seeing that. Because you're not necessarily in the stadiums. You can't always see you can tell the change in the speeds, but you can't necessarily always see the change in the pitches quite as clearly as you can on the TV.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, I love both. But yeah, I mean, I love watching on TV. It's great.
Yeah, when we talked last night, you said that the craft of pitching interests you more than anything else in the game.
Yeah.
And you said specifically that you would rather watch a pitcher's duel than a slugfest. Is that just because you're from the UK, so you love soccer, and you'd hate watching any team actually score during a game? Or
no, I think it's that thing with... Well, I prefer to watch a pitcher's duel on TV.
Okay.
And I'd prefer to watch a slugfest actually in the stadium.
Interesting.
Because you have I think, visually, the excitement of... I mean, you can get excitement in a pitcher's duel within the stadium,
Mm-hmm.
but a pitcher's duel generally, if it's tight, will not lead to an awful lot of action if the guy's doing a very good job. And I love watching that on TV to see the pitching sequence and how a pitcher's manipulating or controlling or forcing a batter in a certain way and tailoring their pitch to that guy who's in the box.
Mm-hmm.
You can see that clearly on TV, or clearer, I think, on TV.
Yeah.
But yeah, I love watching a pitcher's duel on TV, and just the excitement of it. I mean, you've got these like two titans coming up against each other, and it's like, right, who's gonna prevail and who's gonna crack first?
Yeah.
And yeah, but a slugfest. I mean, yeah, in the stadium with lots of action and people sliding in and close plays at home plate, all that. It's fantastic. I mean, you can't beat it.
When you were at the Twins game in Minneapolis, you saw what a lot of people consider to be the future of stadium entertainment.
Oh yeah.
What do you think of rooms that are set up for people to play video games while they're at a baseball game?
Yeah, I'm not sure about that. I'm not convinced. I mean, I don't know. I mean, this is. I keep thinking, well, what can a British guy tell people who come from America or North America what about the national pastime and what they should do with it? But I feel like the beauty of baseball for me is that pace and the concentration, the commitment that it takes to watch it, and the giving yourself to it, the commitment to that chunk of time and letting yourself be completely immersed in it in that way. There's kind of a special... It's very special. I think that's a real special thing to do. It's a special thing to be part of. But it's also it's almost like a special skill in your mind to be able to have that peace and have that time. Where I think, like in most aspects of life, we don't have that. You're rushing to work. You've lost your car keys. You've burnt your shirt with the iron or whatever else. Things are. There's so much all that going on. It's lovely to be able to immerse yourself in something that's outside of yourself and slow and just a spectacle you can watch. Yeah, if you're playing Fortnite or Minecraft or whatever in the outfield, I'm not sure if that's, you're not talking to anybody necessarily, and you're not. It's not. To me, it's not necessarily what is available in a ballpark, and I think it's too bad in some respects. I feel like you've got to be careful what you're encouraging,
Mm-hmm.
and how that makes people think about the game. So I don't know. I feel like there's just a danger in trying to do things like that, which actually I think distract people away from the game. And I feel like, well, if you're playing StarCraft and you really enjoy it, that's great. But that probably means you're just going to stay at home and watch or play StarCraft more rather than come to the ballpark.
To play devil's advocate, and for the record, I think baseball belongs in a baseball stadium.
Right.
What if things like that bring 10 new people inside the stadium that would have never otherwise been there?
True.
And hear the roar of a crowd and think like, oh, let's go check out what's going on over there.
Yeah.
Even if it gets 10 new people a game and only one of them becomes a lifelong baseball fan, like, is that worth it in the long run? Like, is giving that real estate in your stadium, is it worth it to gain maybe a new fan every day? Or what?
I just feel like there's other ways of doing it. It's like we talked about before about, social media and exposure, from teaching teenage students for the last 15 years or so. I mean, they're all on their phones. They want to be on their phones. They want to be on Instagram. They want to be on Twitter. Yeah. They want to be on social media. They want to talk to each other like that. And that's great to a certain extent. But I feel like baseball can be marketed through that to these younger minds, the younger generations, to show them the amazing plays and the amazing theatrical performances and the emotions and the meltdowns and all that sort of thing that they'd love to see, the soap opera or the drama of baseball. To me, that seems more like a way in which you can probably get more people and get them, okay, well maybe we should go and see the real thing. It'd be really cool to see Javi Baez at second base and, see that for real.
Yeah. And what's been the coolest or the most memorable feature of a ballpark that you've been to so far on this trip?
Oh my goodness, there's quite a lot. I mean, every ballpark has its own incredible feature. There's not one where I feel like there's, Wrigley today and yesterday, the scoreboard is without a doubt an incredibly beautiful, iconic bit of design. It's gorgeous. The ivy, of course. But, in Cincinnati, the steamboat kind of bit in the outfield. In New Mexico, the Isotopes, Albuquerque Isotopes, like the AAA team, the hills in the background, beautiful. I really couldn't say the coolest. I feel like every ballpark has got something really neat. I mean, the Twins, when the Minnie and Paul sign, they score the home run and the guys are shaking. Arlington, that's a fantastic stadium. The porches in the outfield, and then I think it's the right field. They've got the stand there's kind of modelled on the old Tiger Stadium. The guy was telling me that was cool. I was like, yeah, it's got it had a kind of a harkening back to the old days or older kind of forms of architecture, but it was also within a reasonably contemporary feeling, a ballpark feeling, and it was a great stadium. But they've all got. I mean, it's like Houston Astros. I love. I can't think what he's called now, but the guy on the train,
the engineer.
The engineer, yeah. Fantastic. Yeah. And just I remember the first time they scored a home run, and there's like typical Texas. It's the loudest bang, crack of like the explosion in the outfield. And I was like, jumped out my skin. It's just great, fantastic. So everywhere has their special feature, special thing. I think. Yeah,
that's cool. If you remember at the beginning of the interview, we asked for 5 numbers.
Yeah.
That's because we do a segment called Quick Pitch.
Oh, boy.
I have 99 questions written down, and whatever number you gave me, I'm going to ask you the question that I have associated with that number. So first you pick number 8.
Yep.
That one may be a little bit hard for you to answer, but I'm going to ask it anyways.
Go on.
If you had the power to change the outcome of one play in baseball history, what play would you change?
Yeah, I mean, part of me would say, why would you want to do that? Like, you won't want to do that. Like, don't do that. That's the whole point. Like, these amazing things have happened, or these amazing cock-ups. These are terrible, like, fielding blunders or whatever. And yeah, you don't want to change that. Like, why change that? I mean, it was I wanted Ichiro in his last game to score a home run or get another hit, and he didn't. But that was somehow great because that happens. Accept it. That's all right.
Interesting.
Like, but seriously, no, I don't. I mean, I can't think that I'd want to.
That's fine. Yeah. I like that answer.
Yeah.
All right. Next, you pick number 22. What record in baseball do you think is least likely to be broken?
Oh, it's got to be the consecutive games one, isn't it? How many, like, that's surely, was it?
Cal Ripken Jr.?
Yeah, surely, like...
2632, I believe, is the number.
Okay, I mean, that's never going to happen, is it?
It shouldn't happen because it just doesn't make sense for people to play 162 games in a year for 18 years. Or, there's no reason for it. It was incredible when it happened, and a lot of people think that Cal Ripken Jr. breaking Lou Gehrig's streak saved baseball because in 1994 they had the strike.
Right, yeah.
And a lot of baseball fans were like, I'm never coming back.
Yeah, right.
And then you had this incredible moment that Lou Gehrig, I believe, he gave his famous speech July 4th, 1939. So he hadn't played in 55 years. And for those 55 years, people thought like that record is unbreakable. He's the Iron Horse.
Yeah.
And here comes Cal Ripken Jr. And people are like, oh my God, he might break this record.
Yeah.
And that energy,
Oh, yeah. There's something about those sorts of... I remember I think it was Jackie Bradley Jr. He was on a hitting streak, 2016 or something like that. And just that was... I made a commemorative fan to commemorate that moment because I can't remember how many hits he got to in the end, but it was 30-something or 20-something, I think.
Yeah.
But, there was just a bit of a buzz of every time he came to the plate, was he going to get that hit again?
Right.
And that was kind of cool. I know what you mean. It was that energy of, wow, the expectation and the excitement, the buzz of, can he do it?
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I guess that would be the one that would spring to my mind straight away, just because I feel like the way they protect the players and the players' worth, it's like, well,
exactly.
You're not going to run them out that much. They're pretty highly sought after commodities.
Yeah. So next you picked 66.
Clickety click.
What personality trait of yours has gotten you into the most trouble?
Oh boy. I think probably, I mean, not necessarily most trouble, but I guess my relative obsession with my painting and my own work has dominated my time and my life and my thinking, which has not always necessarily been easy for other people to see, to live with, to understand. And I think, especially just growing up and just being a moody teenager and, if a painting went bad, I was not happy. And, the ups and downs of an art education or a creating paintings or creating art, I feel like there's real high highs at times and there's real low lows. And if you really care about it, it can really hurt you. And I think that can be hard for other people to understand and see. It's almost like I've met, again, wives of the players and mums of the players and stuff. And I almost feel like I can understand, like they desperately want their husband, their son to do well because they know it means everything. Yeah. And I almost feel like, I can remember, my family going through similar things with me, or friends or girlfriends or whatever, just like it can hurt. Yeah. And
well, I guess the blessing and the curse of being an artist compared to an athlete is that as an athlete, your window is so short.
Absolutely, yeah.
If you don't make it by the time you're 22, you're probably not going to make it.
Yeah, you're done.
And even if you do make it, you're done by the time you're 35 if you're lucky.
Yeah, right.
As an artist, you've got 90 years.
I've got a few years left in me, hopefully.
But that means that you also have 90 years of possibly being hurt.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, again, I think you or hopefully, I hope you that becomes part of it. You've got to accept it. You've got to accept that that's the way it goes sometimes. It doesn't always work out how you want it to work out. And that you are learning. I feel like it's a pleasure to be doing it and to be constantly having that challenge, to be mentally pushing myself, physically in many ways, and reaching out, pushing yourself in new directions and trying new things and taking risks, and it's exciting. For me, it's unbelievable. I mean, it's you never know quite what's going to happen, and you've got these tubes and it's kind of alchemy. You're trying to change the properties of this stuff and create something special from it. And that's something,
Yeah. All right, next was number 88.
Two Fat Ladies.
Thank you. If you could drive any vehicle from pop culture history, so movies, TV, comic books, anything, what would you want to drive?
It'd have to be the DeLorean in Back to the Future.
Where would you go? Where would you take that?
You know what? I'd take it back to the Mexico 1986 World Cup when Diego Maradona put the hand of God when he put the ball into the net. I was 6 years old. I remember watching that on a black and white TV in Enfield, North London. And that was just the worst thing I'd ever seen. I couldn't believe it. And it devastated me.
Let's go back to number 8.
Yeah.
If you had the power to change the outcome of one play in soccer history, would you change the outcome of that play? Or would you just...
For the sake of a 6-year-old me, I would. Because I just couldn't believe that anyone could do that and get away with it, and it was okay.
And he got away with it.
It just seemed wrong. It was like everything you've been told in life is, you don't lie, be nice to people.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to get caught if you do that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, you try and be good. This guy goes and puts the ball in with his hands.
In the World Cup.
And he gets away with it. That's not right.
Right.
And you look at your mum and dad. What happened?
The hand of God.
Incredible. So maybe I'd go back to that and I don't know.
So the entirety of baseball you're going to let live, but that play in soccer.
Yeah, that's it. That's
okay.
it. Or maybe actually, again, God, if we're getting on to that, the 1990 World Cup, England in the penalty shootout against West Germany. God, that was tough.
All right, the last question from this segment. Number 49. What player in Major League Baseball history do you think was truly underrated or underappreciated? Is there somebody who you've done research about or read about or heard about or listened to a podcast that they're like, it just seems like somebody that you wish you knew more about or more people knew more about?
I remember being in Cincinnati at the museum there, and they had some of the pictures on the walls of the players from the Negro Leagues. Mm-hmm. And, some of them, they didn't know their names. A lot of them they did, but there was a few that was, I think it just said unknown or something.
Player, yeah.
And it was just like, this guy was obviously clearly very good, and he's being included as part of this team that they're talking about, but nobody knows his name. Mm-hmm. And there's a little bit of a sadness of that, where that's been lost. That springs to mind.
Do you kind of think that that's like why you do what you do, is to, you said earlier that you want to document what's happening. Do you think that there's some part of you that's like let's go back to 100 years ago. There was Fenway Park and Wrigley Field and Comiskey Park and Yankees, all these
the Polo
places
grounds.
Right.
Shard Park. Yeah.
None of them exist anymore except for 2.
Yeah.
So now here you are in the year, 2019, painting and documenting to preserve
absolutely
the memory and the history.
Absolutely, yeah.
Is that a conscious thing that enters your mind? Does that play a role in why you're doing what you're doing? Or is that just nice effect?
No, I think there is definitely a part of that, because I feel like these ballparks, I've done it with football stadiums as well. They're so important to the towns, they're so important to the cities, they're so important to the game. And, they do get bulldozed down or knocked down or replaced or changed or whatever else. And, that's usually for a good reason, but you lose a lot when you do that. You lose everything that's, all that history that's gone into it. The blood, sweat and tears of the people cheering and clapping and applauding, and the players on the field, and that soil and that wood and that steel, and, that's important. The essence and the feeling of that place is important. And so I feel like within the paintings, I want to try and capture that to if they do get bulldozed down or whatever happens to them, to show future generations so they can get a glimpse of it, so they can get an idea of it. It's like, those old, I love looking at the old illustrations of baseball and the old diamonds and the way they used to be set up, and then the players and their uniforms and, all those sorts of things, because you can get a sense of, that was what it's like, and that's where the crowd sat, and and the umpire was over there, and that's how they used to pitch, or that's how the bleachers used to look like, or that's how the stands look like, or the grandstands. And that's special, I think. Arguably, you could do the same with photography, and you can. But it's different. Mm-hmm. It's just different. But I think it's important, without a doubt.
Let's say somebody had never seen any of your work before, and you could show them one piece that you've done to be like, this is me. This is what I do. This is who I am. What piece do you think you would show them?
I feel like everything that I do is me. I feel like, I guess I have in the past been associated. Like there was a piece I made of the Queen of England back in 2002, made it out of tea bags, and it was about 1,000 tea bags stitched onto a piece of hessian. It made an image of the Queen. And, you know, I had a question about me in Trivial Pursuit from that. I got a letter from Buckingham Palace. I was on the BBC News and all this sort of thing. And for a long time, I was very much associated with the Queen and this portrait I made out of her of tea bags. And yeah, I did do that. But I've also done hundreds, thousands, you know, of other drawings, paintings, sketches, whatever else. And I don't really necessarily want to be associated with one painting or one piece of work, because I feel like it's the whole catalogue, it's the whole body of it, which is me and my journey and my experiences. And even in the baseball paintings, it's you know, me learning about the game, me travelling through the game, me travelling to different continents and countries and in different ballparks, watching the game. And, you know, to begin with, I'm doing small sketches, and then I'm, you know, using acrylics on A3 size paper. And that changes, but that's my understanding changing, and that's my development. You know, I think all artists are you'd hope, bigger than one piece of work. I guess you can be proud of one. There's nothing necessarily wrong with that.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, no, because they've all got bits that I really enjoy and really love. But there's almost, you know, I do another one and I'm like, wow, that's fantastic. Until I do the next one, and then I think that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Hopefully. So not one in particular. I feel like it's the whole body of stuff.
Last night we laid out all of the paintings that you had done on this trip.
Yeah.
In chronological order.
Yeah.
Was that interesting to you?
Yeah,
What
yeah.
trends did you see emerging? Like, how did you see your work progressing from the beginning of the trip to this point so far?
It was very interesting to see them all laid out, because I've generally been staying in reasonably small rooms or motel rooms or whatever, not had that much space or time really just to take and reflect on them and look at them properly. It was interesting to see the different atmospheres. It was interesting to see, right, are they all the same, or are they all looking the same? Do they all feel the same? Do they look like they're done by the same guy, or are they different? I feel like there's definitely similarities, but there's definitely things that change: the crowds, the attention to the crowds, the attention to the city in the back, the attention to the players, the attention to the signs. I think it does. It seemed to be changing quite a lot. But as it should be. I mean, It should be, because they're different places and they've got different atmospheres and different feelings. And,
right.
You know, that day when I'm painting there, I'm a different guy. I'm one day older or a few hours older, or slightly different, or I've had a good night's sleep or a bad night's sleep or whatever else. So there's a lot of things, I guess, that go into it. Even the Field of Dreams paintings in Dyersville, they were really interesting to see with the others, because they're very different almost. They're definitely done by me, but they're very different. So they've got a very different atmosphere to the stadium, the ballpark paintings. But they've got their own. There's something. I hope. I think there's something special to them as well. But there's just a different sense to them.
Yeah. Is there anything on the horizon that you're excited about? Obviously, like finishing the rest of this trip.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's 15 more stadiums, and that's ballparks, and that's fantastic.
Is that daunting to you? I mean, you said earlier that you've been on this trip for now 1 month and 1 day, and it's felt like years.
Yeah.
You're halfway through.
Yeah, but time-wise, I'm not halfway through. That's the thing. Actually, time-wise, I've got more to do than less, and there is a daunting aspect to that, but there's a massive excitement, because there's been so much that I've learned, seen, felt, experienced in the last month, that I feel like in another 6 weeks' time, my goodness, like, where am I going to be then? And how's the work going to have progressed? And what will have happened? And what will happen at the end? I think that's the bit that, again, is really daunting. Like, I've done this trip, or I'm doing this trip, and it's, I've never known exactly where it's going to finish up. I don't know what's going to happen to all the paintings. I'm not sure what's going to happen to me when I fly out. I'm not sure. I don't know anything at the minute, really. I'm kind of just taking it one day at a time and seeing what comes along the way. I'm excited to get to Cooperstown. That's the ultimate finishing point for me. When I was planning the trip, I wanted to, to work out how to get across America in a reasonably logical, coherent way, and also, like, where do you start, where do you finish, and why? Yeah. Cooperstown seemed to be the ideal place. I've never been to Cooperstown, always wanted to go. And I feel like that for my work and the history in which I want my work to be part of, that seems like the ideal place to finish. I'm excited to get to that point and to, again, lay out the work and exhibit the work and have the work ideally up on a wall somewhere and be able to take a step back and look at it and think about all the amazing, incredible things that have happened already and probably will happen, and the highs and lows and everything in between. I mean, it's been incredible and really up and down and emotional and all sorts, and it'll be quite an accomplishment, I hope, because I feel like I don't think anybody's ever done this before, and I feel like I'm excited to get to that end point and be able to say, yeah, I've done that, and then it'll be, okay, well, what's next? What do I do now? Yeah. And I'm excited for that next project, whatever that may be. I'm just excited. I mean, tomorrow I'm going to Comiskey to paint the White Sox. I can't wait. It'll be great.
Yeah, it will be.
I'm going to meet up with Joey. That'll be fantastic, and we'll have a good time. So it'll be, I can't wait. I'm just excited. Just can't wait.
So as long as the drives have been from city to city on the first half of your trip, that's how short most of them will be on the East Coast. So take solace in that. Yeah. You will get much better sleep.
Oh, God.
You will be able to enjoy the cities themselves instead of having to get up and just drive because you've got 8 hours to drive, where New York to Boston or Boston to Philly, or they're much shorter trips.
Absolutely, yeah.
So you've got that to look forward to.
I've got a big one from Miami up to Washington, but I've got a few days. I've got a few days to do that and a few stop offs, so that's going to be good.
Okay, good.
But yeah, I mean, it's all great. I mean, it's incredible. Yeah, it's like nothing else I've done before, and I love it.
Yeah. How can people find you if they want to see more of your work, or reach out to you if they want to commission a piece of their own?
Yeah, you can go to on Twitter. I'm at Andy B is an artist. Or you can go to my website, andybrownstadiums.com, or you can go to my Instagram, which again is Andy Brown is an artist.
And what is that a reference to again?
It's a Keith Arnott piece. Keith Arnott was a conceptual artist. Mostly, I guess his most famous work came around in the, I guess, early 70s, late 60s, and he was kind of like making reference to the myth of an artist, and I've always found that quite interesting. What is an artist, and when can you say you're an artist, and what does an artist do, and how do they behave? And so he made a big placard that he walked around with and had himself photographed with. It just said Keith Arnott is an artist, and he had one that said real artist, and in the gallery it had the exhibition was just huge letters that just said Keith Arnott is an artist, and I thought that's incredible. That's his artwork. I mean, how awesome.
Yeah, that's pretty funny.
I think that's good, Dan.
Cool.
Great. It was
Thanks
amazing.
So much.
It was fun.
All right, now it's time for a segment called What'd You Think, Mom?, where we talk to my mom, who just listened to the interview with me, and we ask her what she thinks. This is my real, actual mom. Her name is Lori, but I've always just called her Mom. Can you say something to prove that you are my actual mom?
I've fancied your wit for over 30 years.
Yeah, join the club. What makes you my mom?
The length of time and the consistency.
So what did you think of the Andy Brown episode?
I think we have to start with the Field of Dreams story and how you kept missing him and thought, okay, that wasn't going to happen. Mm-hmm. And then you come out and are killing time on the field before sunset, and you turn around and there he is. That was a ooey booey moment. Maybe Iowa really is heaven.
No, it's just Iowa. No, that was cool. It was one of those things, and I said it at the beginning when I was talking to him. I saw somebody sitting in front of the fence painting, and I was like, there's no way that's him, but who else could it possibly be? Especially after having just missed him in Cincinnati. Mm-hmm. I was just like, oh, man, because during the Cubs season when I was bartending, I don't get days off. So it was kind of a hassle to get down to the south side if I even had that work with my schedule. So I was like, all right, the only way it would even be feasible is if I catch him at Wrigley. But I'm always at work, so I just knew it was never going to happen. And then missed him in Cincinnati. I was like, all right, there aren't too many other random days where I'm just at a different ballpark in America.
Right.
And then literally less than a week later, I was walking out of the house at Field of Dreams, and there he was. So he mentioned this in the interview about how there are certain moments where he just felt like this is where I'm supposed to be right now. Mm-hmm. That was one of those moments for me.
He used the phrase baseball is magic throughout the interview. But when he described that moment of when you came up to him and said, are you Andy Brown? And you could just feel the hairs on the back of your neck go up. Mm-hmm. And he said about that it was just completely magical. And yeah, that's what it is. I mean, it goes beyond coincidence sometimes. And
Right.
that was one of those moments.
And not only that, I knew that he was trying to finish his painting before the sun went down too. So I was like, hey, I have all my podcast equipment with me. I didn't do any preparation for an interview with you, but I could do one on the fly. Why don't you finish your painting? I'll go sit on the bench and do some research on you real quick and, come up with an interview, and we can go somewhere after the sun goes down and, talk for a little bit. And he's like, yeah, great. That sounds great. So we went to like a local restaurant. It was a Sunday night in Dyersville, Iowa. So there was one place that was open.
Right. Right.
And it just happened to be called Joe's.
Right. Of course it was just called Joe's, because you know what? Baseball is magic.
Mm-hmm. And we talked for 3 hours without rolling tape. We just were sitting down eating and just talk about his trip. It was kind of interesting to revisit this interview and see where he was at mentally. He was exhausted. You could tell. Right. And we've been on long road trips like that. It's at a certain point, it's not fun. Mm-hmm. You're just getting through it.
Right. The romance is gone.
Right.
The fantasy is gone, and it's the hard physical reality.
Right. And I don't want to take credit for like rejuvenating him, but I think that our meeting in the middle of his trip, coming right when it did and turning out to be what it was, gave him some hope, because he was exhausted when we met. So anyway, we talked for 3 hours at the restaurant without even rolling tape. We didn't even set up equipment or anything. We were just talking. And then we realized, all right, well, now it's like 11 o'clock and I still have to drive 3.5 hours home. So if we're going to do an interview of any substance, it's going to be so late. So I was just like, why don't you tell me what your schedule is? He knew he was going to come back to Chicago at some point on his route. I was like, stay with me in Chicago. We'll have all the time in the world. You don't have to pay for a hotel or motel. You can have free food. And
I've taken that deal sometimes.
Yeah. So he was just like, all right, perfect. And so that gave him something to look forward to again in a few days. And then it turned out the last episode that we aired was the Joey Mellows episode. And it turns out that they were friends and their paths just happened to cross. It was coincidental. They didn't plan it.
Sure it was.
And so that chance meeting at the Field of Dreams with me and Andy turned into now I met Joey.
Right.
It's just all these interwoven coincidences and relationships that baseball is magic.
Mm-hmm. I liked the way he could turn a phrase. His vision of things was very inspirational and very artistic. When he talked about going to Field of Dreams earlier that day, not really knowing exactly what was going on and whatever, and pulls into the car park and it's kind of crowded, and he looks ahead and he said, the 1919 Chicago White Sox are on the diamond. Where I wouldn't have just said that in conversation.
Right.
But
you'd be like, hey, there's guys over there.
Look at that. And then he goes on to say he gathers up all his materials to get out there and capture the moment. And I'm thinking I would have been grabbing my camera or my phone to make sure I'm capturing the moment. His end result is so much better than what I would have done as well. But it's the same thing. It's how do you capture it? Because you know it's a moment of import and you want to preserve it. And he does it with such great artistic ability.
Mm-hmm. One of the things that he talked about was how there's no bad seats in a ballpark. You just get a different view. I like that perspective. And I kind of feel that same way. And we've brought this up in previous episodes too, where when I ask people, where's your favorite place to sit in a stadium? It depends on the stadium. If you're at Fenway, it'd be cool to sit on top of the Green Monster. And if you're at Coors Field, it'd be cool to sit up in the row of purple seats in the second deck. At Wrigley, in the bleachers, is much different than behind home plate. So every stadium has its own personality and its own character, and I think that's what Andy is trying to capture, painting all the stadiums, where if you did the same trip painting football fields, it wouldn't be nearly as interesting because every single football field is 100 yards long. Baseball, yeah, the bases are all 90 feet apart and the mound is 60 feet 6 inches, but down left field line is different in every stadium. Center field is different in every stadium. The angles of the walls and how they're constructed and how the grandstand is associated with the field. And it's that to me is another interesting part of baseball, especially visually, is how everything is so different. And each particular place can have its own character that the fans know, like, this is our stadium.
Right. It's the atmosphere within that stadium, too. And it changes from city to city because the culture within the city is different than a culture within another city. How he translates that to his work. Before we started the interview, you just showed me one example of one of his stadium paintings. And the first thing I thought of was something that we've seen in Chicago at the Art Institute, and it's an impressionist, Monet. And the whole idea was it's to give the impression of something, and that he captures the essence of the moment. He captures the essence of the atmosphere, of the experience of the crowd, the noise, everything. He can do that with colors. And again, that's the difference between taking a photograph and a painting. You can generate passion in a painting by what colors you use or the strokes you use or whatever. What a gift to be able to have that. And definitely where he's going to the different stadiums and he's getting there early so that he can get the scope of the land. He's done his research to know what he should be looking for, but then picking up on how is he going to translate that to a canvas or paper.
And he still wants to experience the ballpark.
Right.
So to be able to have that time beforehand to walk around so he can see, because during the game he's working.
Right.
So you're trying to capture the atmosphere and the crowd and all that kind of stuff, but you're not experiencing it the way you would if you were just sitting at the game watching. So I think that time before the game when he gets to scope out the ballpark is important for him too.
I'll never think of the seventh inning stretch the same way because I'll be thinking that would be Andy going, oh my God, am I done with this or not? How much more do I have? And, if there are 3 up, 3 down, I'm screwed.
Yeah. It was interesting to me when he said the stadiums are just the checkpoints along the journey, not the journey itself. That was a sense that I got listening back to this interview was that, yeah, he's an artist and his goal is to sell the paintings that he creates, but he was really doing this road trip for himself.
Right. It's a personal journey.
It wasn't to sell paintings. You could just tell by the way that he utilizes or doesn't utilize his social media, where like if he really wanted to, he could be schmoozing with people and trying to find people. And when he's in Seattle, try and find somebody who's a huge Mariners fan or just a businessman who like, hey, you want to buy this painting for $100,000? But no, he's there because he wants to see the stadium. He wants to paint it. And then he wants to go to San Diego.
Right.
And that was very apparent to me listening back to this one. He did this for himself. It wasn't about raising money or selling paintings. It was because he wanted to have the experience.
And what's so fascinating is he wasn't raised with baseball.
Right.
He's not an American. And listening to his perspective of how he analyzed how Americans treat baseball and what it means to American culture. And we can learn a lot by looking at his independent eyes, looking at us. We're talking about this now in the summer of 2020. And baseball hasn't happened yet. And it's glaringly missing from our culture today.
Right.
So what are we doing? We're watching reruns of Greatest Moments. We're watching baseball movies. We're watching anything we can get our hands on, not only in baseball, but in all sports. I think it's building up an appreciation for the people who are doing that in what came before and your love of the game and your understanding of the game, your appreciation of the history of it. He had all that. And he gets it. So when you asked him about how he came about to do this, and for an American, this would be a lifelong dream. For a baseball fan who's American, to visit all the Major League Baseball stadiums, that's a quest. And you might spread it out over years and never accomplish it, but it's a quest. And here he is. It wasn't even on his mind 5 years ago. It's just like within the past couple of years, I should do that, and I'm going to do that. And then to do it, and back to, again, the idea of it versus the hard reality of doing it. Very interesting.
He said baseball brings people together. It unifies them inside the park, despite there being fear, distrust, anxiety outside the parks. And that's what we're seeing, in this summer without baseball. There is no place where people can unify. And that's glaringly obvious that, like you said, baseball is missing right now, and we're missing baseball.
Right. The connections that we make where we set aside the differences, and it takes a Brit to say from stadium to stadium, there's always the stars and stripes. And I thought that was an interesting way to say the American flag. It's always the stars and stripes in every stadium. The flag, the national anthem, in those moments we're together. It brings people together, and it's the unity, the commonality. We are able to find common ground, cheering all for one goal. There might be 2 goals going on in the stadium at any given point, but that's what it is. It's more than just the stereotype of throwing baseball, apple pie, and Chevrolet. It is woven into the fabric of who we are. And when we don't have that reinforcement at a time when we really need it, it is glaringly obvious.
What personality trait of yours has gotten you into the most trouble?
My big mouth.
Did you want to take a second to think about that? Or
It's exactly what I thought of when you read the question to him. But thanks for not jumping in on your agreement with that.
A point that he brought up a lot of times in the interview was that baseball has such a simplicity to it, but it's still so complex, and that
Right.
that's the beauty of it. And I think that it's also what keeps new fans from coming to the game. The simplicity at first seems like it's boring. So if you don't know what you're watching, you're just like, when is this going to pick up?
Mm-hmm.
And then when you do start to kind of get interested in it and you realize how complex it is, then that's daunting. It really is hard to find a way to break new fans into baseball. And I think it's because of the simplicity and the complexity of the sport.
I think you need a mix of seeing it in person and watching it on TV.
Mm-hmm.
And that discussion that he went into, I thought was very interesting, and I agreed with a lot of it. I generally don't like watching baseball on TV when you have the lulls and you hear the background noise of the crowd.
Mm-hmm.
When I'm watching on TV, I know they're in a baseball stadium. I don't want to hear the crowd. At that moment, I just want to absorb the sight,
Mm-hmm.
or I want to hear, when it's appropriate, the analysis that I wouldn't have on my own. I want to hear the perspective. I want to hear what a baseball player's mind is thinking when they're looking at a certain play, or what is the nuance behind a stance or whatever.
Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of the hurdles that baseball has on a television broadcast is that if it's a national broadcast, the broadcaster doesn't necessarily know each player intimately or can tell you the background or what he did 3 weeks ago against this guy. And like, yeah, they've done their research and they've got their game notes and stuff, but it's not that same level of knowledge. And of the 30 teams, not all 30 of them have a great broadcasting crew.
Right.
So if you happen to have one of the teams that isn't great, well, now what?
Right.
You know? So that makes it hard then to make your team appointment television. And
Right.
if you're turning on the TV and dreading watching the next 3 hours because your broadcaster is just going to complain about the umpires all game, every game for 6 straight years,
Mm-hmm.
that's not fun.
Mm-hmm.
Or if one of the best players on your team hits a home run every 5 games and does a bat flip every, 5th home run, and the broadcaster says how this is ruining baseball,
Right.
and he's your home broadcaster,
Right.
like, this is your guy.
Mm-hmm.
And you're telling me how bad it is to watch him? Like, no, this is exciting.
Right.
When you watch an NBA broadcast, they're always talking about how these are the best players on the planet.
Mm-hmm.
And every generation gets better. And yeah, Michael Jordan's the best ever, but LeBron's pretty great. Steph Curry's the best shooter who's ever lived. And Kawhi Leonard might be the best defender who's ever lived. And every analysis is so uplifting, and they're saying how great the game is, how fun the sport is. And so many times when I watch a baseball game, they're talking about how bad it is and how
Right.
much better it used to be. It's like, what are you doing here then?
Mm-hmm.
Let somebody else have this job who wants to be here and who loves it and is trying to make it better. If all you're doing is telling me how bad it is, then I don't need to watch this. And I love baseball, but if you get the wrong broadcast team, I'm not going to watch it at all.
I agree with what you're saying about when you watch the NBA, it's always about these players are the best in the world. And you're right, you never get that perception when you're watching an MLB game. And it's easy to forget that because it's, first of all, it's 162 games, so it's often, but you have to kind of step away from it and put that in your head that it is, because I don't know that if you were watching the 1927 games, if you watched on TV all the time that year, for example, did you get bored listening to Babe Ruth coming up, or did you get bored watching him? Or if he struck out, you're like, oh, that loser, he blew it again.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think so, but I don't know. And so you could be watching somebody right now and they are the best in the world, and you're hearing the negative noise in your head, and it takes away from what you really should be appreciating.
And Andy kind of talks about that too, is that in baseball, if you fail 7 times out of 10, you're still really good.
I like that.
That's an old saying and common knowledge, but it's an interesting point in this discussion where if the broadcasters are seeing the best players in the world fail 7 out of 10 times, it's easy for them to forget that 3 out of 10 times they're watching them succeed.
Right.
And doing things that no other player has ever done before, or just doing it in a different way, where in sports in general, the athletes get better and the game gets better every generation, where the 25th guy on the bench on a current baseball team would be the best player in the league 40 years ago. Granted, it's because they have dietitians and year-round training programs and all this kind of stuff, and can hit 104-mile-an-hour fastballs, where 40 years ago, if somebody was reaching 98, they're like, oh my God, how can he throw this fast?
Right.
Everybody gets better. The pitchers get better. And when people talk about the steroids era and how Barry Bonds doesn't belong in the Hall of Fame because he was on steroids, well, so was every pitcher he faced. So everybody was taking steroids. So to me, that's kind of a moot point, where everybody gets better all the time, and to still see people succeeding and doing incredible things, and guys like Mike Trout having the stats that he has, or, I'm not a huge Pete Alonso fan, but, hitting 50 home runs as a rookie, that's incredible.
Right. Something I think that gets lost in when we go to games today, and physically go to games today, is the appreciation of the space within the walls of the whatever. It doesn't have to be MLB.
Mm-hmm.
Going there early and watching the event evolve into the event. We have always loved to do that. And maybe it's because we were used to it, because when you played even Little League, we'd get there early because usually Dad might have been coaching or whatever, but you just see it all come together. And when you go to a baseball field and it's empty and you're just watching the groundskeepers prep the field and make it the best it can be, and then they move on, and then you start seeing players straggle in, and they're starting to do some warm-up stuff out on the field, and you're watching the camaraderie. You're starting to see the fans fill in. You see vendors coming around, filling up their carts or their trays or whatever they're going to have, until you get to the moment where the stadium is full and you stand up for the national anthem. And it's like, it is over those 2 hours, you go from the silence and the serenity and the peacefulness of the stadium to the height of the moment.
Mm-hmm.
That's such a great thing to watch. And I think that's something to do with little kids too, is to help them appreciate the space of it. That's why going to games is so important. The feeling that when you're in the moment of it, the sights, the smells, the scents, you can't capture that on TV, obviously, and that's okay. And when you're sitting in the seats, like I hate getting up and missing 2 innings to go stand in line for something. You want to see everything play out. I think that's an important part. When you started the discussion about video games being brought into a baseball stadium, no, really just no, I don't get it. I understand that they're trying to do anything. Bring the energy to the field.
Mm-hmm.
Do other things.
But I think this is also what Brian Bernardoni was talking about in his episode, was it's the job of the owners to make the stadium viable 365 days a year. If you can bring in video games when the team isn't in town, they show on ESPN now, like 15 years ago it was poker. Well, now it's video games.
Mm-hmm.
There are stadiums full of people watching people play. So maybe,
right.
so again, like maybe you can't go from 0 to 60, but this is just the foot in the door. Have a little room and get people used to, okay, I'm going to come to the baseball stadium to play video games. And I'm not a fan of it either, but just thinking outside the box, like,
right.
you gotta do something.
Right.
And so I think maybe that's the thought process there.
Okay, then we'll go with that.
I thought it was interesting when Andy would talk about the difference between the Korean baseball league and the Japanese baseball league, and obviously then American baseball, just how the crowds are different and how the cheering is different and how the atmosphere is so different, even though you're watching the same game.
Atlanta, the chop,
Yeah.
the thundersticks. Right, we have it too. It's just that our states are their countries.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I'm saying, when he's trying to capture the essence of the energy within the culture of that park,
Mm-hmm.
and he's doing it. But that's where you get your civic pride and the unity of that, because again, it crosses personalities and social strata. It crosses everything and brings you to that commonality and that passion.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm all about that. I want to go back to doing a road trip and the romance of it versus the reality. And you talked about being in a car for 8 hours.
Mm-hmm.
Even when we're in a car for 8 hours together, we're not talking the whole time.
Right.
When you're by yourself, and we both have done long road trips solo, I think we both enjoy it.
Mm-hmm.
Because it does give you the opportunity for reflection, and it just gets your head in a different place. If you're driving for 8 hours, you're seeing a lot of different scenery, and chances are it's not urban.
Mm-hmm.
It helps you appreciate our country. It does help you to get your head in a good place. And with him going from place to place to place like that and seeing a country like ours that way, what a gift that is. What a phenomenal opportunity for anybody, let alone someone who doesn't live here, isn't born and raised here, to help you really get a sense of what America's about.
And I think it just gives you a scope of how big this country is. We heard it in Joey's interview, and we heard it in Andy's too, where if they drive 2 hours, they're at the end of the country.
Right.
Or they're crossing an international border.
Mm-hmm.
And for us, 2 hours, you're maybe 45 minutes outside the city. So,
Right.
So you can look at maps all you want, but to actually get in a car and drive from Chicago to Cleveland, mm-hmm. or from Seattle to San Francisco, or from Miami to Washington.
Right.
Like those are long trips. And like I said, you can look at it on a map and be like, okay, that looks like a long trip, but whatever. But to get in the car and then sit for 8 hours and still not be where you're trying to get to and realize that that's a fraction of the size of the country. It's crazy how big the states are.
You could be leaving one city in a winter coat and arriving 8 hours later in a place where you're in shirt sleeves. And
well, we did that one time when we went to Portland and then drove down the Pacific Coast Highway. What was that, a 8-day trip, something like that? And so we got down to Los Angeles and flew back to Chicago. And the morning we flew from Los Angeles, we were walking on the beach in shorts and a t-shirt, mm-hmm. and we're hot. And we got on the plane and it was snowing in Chicago when we got off the plane.
Right. Same country.
I don't know if you had this thought, but I was like, why do we live in this place?
Hello, South Carolina.
But it's so inconceivably large. And that's what I like the most about going on road trips, is seeing how different places can be and still be considered the same place.
Travel is education. It's education in what is the country about, but it's also education in other people. And it gives you an understanding that broadens your view, allows you to hear other opinions and see other ways of thinking of things. And I think is a unifying thing as well, because you realize, bottom line, everyone is the same. You have the same priorities, but definitely travel is education. It broadens your narrow world to be something better and more developed.
If you could go to a soccer game in England, a baseball game in Korea, or a baseball game in Japan, based on how Andy described the atmospheres, what one would you be most interested in seeing?
Probably baseball in Korea. In Japan, he said there was a seriousness to it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, nah, don't need that. So Korea. I really would like to see all 30 paintings now that they're complete and compare them one to the other, and be interested to see chronological order as they were painted. Mm-hmm. See his evolution as the artist and see what essence he's capturing with each one. So, yeah, it was great.
Cool.
Thanks for the time, Andy.
Thanks, man. Okay, so that's it. In the introduction of this episode, I mentioned a trivia question you can answer to win something. Here's how you can do that. First, make sure you're following us on Twitter at Shoeless Podcast. Then, find the pinned tweet at the top of our profile with the link to the Andy Brown episode, which asks you this week's trivia question. The answer to the trivia question was somewhere in the episode that you just finished listening to. Retweet that tweet along with your answer, and we'll announce the winner in next week's episode. You don't have to be first, you just have to be right, and you have to be following us. We'll pick one person who answered correctly, and they'll get their choice of either a DVD copy or a Blu-ray copy of the classic movie Field of Dreams. If you're already following Shoeless Podcast on Twitter, you've seen Andy's work before, whether you realize it or not. The banner at the top of our profile is actually a watercolor painting he created of me and Joey Mellows while we did our interview in my living room back in Chicago. While Joey and I talked, Andy watched from the couch and painted us. We recorded that interview at like 2 in the morning on a night that came toward the tail end of a super long stretch for all three of us. Joey and Andy were each in the middle of their solo road trips across America, with their paths coincidentally crossing in Chicago. I had worked a 12-hour shift at Yoxie's, the bar in Wrigleyville in Chicago where I bartended before moving to South Carolina to take over the Shoeless Joe Jackson Museum. It was the final day of a 6-day homestand for the Cubs, and I worked doubles on each of them because we were short-staffed. The day before that homestand began, I drove to Iowa where I interviewed Craig Purcell, the tour guide from the Field of Dreams movie site, inside the house in Dyersville. I came outside after our interview was over, ran into Andy who was painting by the white picket fence, and played baseball on the field for a few hours while Andy got in as much work as he could before the sun went down. Then he and I got a bite to eat and spoke for a few hours, and I drove back to Chicago, getting home a little after 2 a.m. The night Joey and I sat down to do our interview, we were both dead tired, as was Andy. But I think our interview turned out great, Andy's painting turned out great, and we all had another example to help us believe that everything happens for a reason. I mentioned at the beginning of the episode, and we touched on it during the interview, that at the conclusion of Andy's 2019 trip across America, he had an exhibition of all of his work at Doubleday Field in Cooperstown, New York. Doubleday Field is named after Abner Doubleday, who was born June 26, 1819. He was a career United States Army officer and a Union Major General in the American Civil War. He fired the first shot in defense of Fort Sumter, the opening battle of the war, and had a pivotal role in the early fighting at the Battle of Gettysburg. Doubleday died on January 26, 1893. 10 years later, in 1903, the British sports writer Henry Chadwick published an article speculating that baseball derived from a British game called rounders, which Chadwick had played as a boy in England. But baseball executive Albert Spalding disagreed. Spalding said baseball was fundamentally an American sport and began on American soil. To settle the matter, the two men appointed a commission headed by Abraham Mills, who was the fourth president of the National League. The commission, which also included 6 other sports executives, labored for 3 years. The committee's final report, which came out on December 30th, 1907, stated in part that the first scheme for playing baseball, according to the best evidence obtainable to date, was devised by Abner Doubleday at Cooperstown, New York, in 1839. It concluded by saying, "In the years to come, in the view of the hundreds of thousands of people who are devoted to baseball, and the millions who will be, Abner Doubleday's fame will rest evenly upon the fact that he was its inventor, as upon his brilliant and distinguished career as an officer in the Federal Army." John Thorne, the official historian of Major League Baseball, wrote a book called Baseball in the Garden of Eden, The Secret History of the Early Game, which is about the sport's earliest days. He says the story about Doubleday inventing the game of baseball actually came from a Colorado mining engineer. Thorne says, he claimed to have been present at a schoolboy game at which Abner Doubleday took a stick and drew in the dust the diagram for a completely new ballgame. In fact, the ballgame that this Colorado mining engineer describes was very similar to the game that had been played in many localities for probably 100 years. The citizens of Cooperstown appreciated the acclaim Doubleday had brought to their small village, but didn't find a suitable way to acknowledge it for many years. When National League President John Tenner came to Cooperstown in 1916, he visited the Finney Lot, a plot of ground once believed to have been used by Doubleday and other Cooperstown schoolboys to play the first game of baseball in 1839, and he suggested that the cow pasture be turned into a memorial to Doubleday. On September 6, 1920, Doubleday Field officially opened. The first game was between Milford and Cooperstown, and John Hadler, president of the National League, was present and umpired the first inning. The problem with all of this is, it would have all been a surprise to Abner Doubleday. The late Civil War hero never once claimed during his life that he had invented baseball. But 15 years after his death, he was anointed as the father of the game. Before becoming baseball's official historian, John Thorne was a member of SABR's 19th Century Baseball Research Committee. He says the real story of baseball is far older than what the Mills Commission determined. Different variations of the game were played in the 18th century in different parts of the country. New York, Philadelphia, and Massachusetts each had their own versions. Eventually, something like the New York game won out. That featured the creation of a foul territory and made players stay on the base path while running. Thorne has said, "I think the New York game won out through superior public relations, because I've played recreation games of the Massachusetts game, and it is a fantastically fun game both to play and watch. The New York game, in many measures, is inferior. In the Massachusetts game, you didn't have to stay on the base path while you were running, so you could lead your opponents on a merry chase into the outfields and beyond. But baseball, even the New York version, was still mainly considered a boys' game. For adults and for the press to take notice, there needed to be another incentive. And that incentive was money. From the very beginning, baseball's rise coincided with professional gamblers taking notice. The people running gambling games realized that adults would be more interested in the game if they could make side bets during innings. They also realized that the endeavor would be profitable for the gambling halls themselves. "I don't think you could have had the rise of baseball without gambling," says Thorne. "It wasn't worthy of press coverage. What made baseball seem important was when gamblers figured out a way to spur interest in it. In the beginning, there were people who turned their noses up at gambling, but they recognized the necessity of it. You wouldn't have had a box score. You wouldn't have had an assessment of individual skills. You wouldn't have had one player of skill moving to another club if there wasn't gambling in it. but the gambling money soon entered the game itself. It was easy to approach a player and ask him to throw a game for a percentage of the coffers. Thorne reminds us that game fixing, which we think of as the Black Sox scandal of 1919, dates back as early as 1865. That's when we had our first scandal and 3 players were banned. John Thorne has been the author and editor of many books about baseball, including Total Baseball, the Official Encyclopedia of Major League Baseball, and the Armchair Book of Baseball. He was the senior creative consultant for the Ken Burns documentary, Baseball. He has frequently written about the beloved but factually incorrect myths that underpin baseball's beginnings. In the biography of Doc Adams for the Sabre Bio Project, John wrote, "The history of baseball is a lie from beginning to end. From its creation myth to its rosy models of commerce, community, and fair play. The conventional tale of the game's birth is substantially incorrect. Not just the Doubleday fable, pointless to attack, but even the scarcely less legendary development of the Knickerbocker game, ostensibly sired by Alexander Cartwright. The truth of the paternity question? 80-year-old Henry Chadwick had it right when he said in 1904, only 1 year before the formation of the Mills Commission, 'Baseball never had no fodder. It just growed.'" If you have questions about the Shoeless Joe Jackson Museum, about the podcast, or about anything else, you can reach out on social media or email me at shoelesspodcast@gmail.com, and I'll try to answer them in next week's episode. If you want to send in a video or audio recording of your questions so I can play it on the show, that's cool too. A lot of you have rated and reviewed my baseball history in the past couple weeks, and we're so thankful for that. Mike in New York left a 5-star rating and said, "This is a terrific podcast that covers aspects of the game of baseball that have been long overlooked. Dan Wallach has a congenial style and really follows the flow of conversation in such a way that his interviewees really open up to him. It's a riveting show." Thank you so much for those kind words. It's a huge help when you guys rate and review the show on whatever platform you choose to listen on. 5-star ratings help our podcast get shown on more people's suggested podcast page, which means that more people will hear our show. It just takes a couple seconds of your time, but it really helps us a lot. And of course, liking us on social media, interacting with our posts, and sharing things with your friends is great too. No matter how you choose to support us, even if it's just by listening, we appreciate you being here. Until next time, I'm Dan Wallach, and this is My Baseball History.